This is chapter 13 of The Wolf Wilder. A lot of people, it turned out, could sew, or at least claimed that they could. The next morning, Jana and Bogdan and the two sisters, Vasilisa and Zoya, pulled down the curtains, borrowed Theo's knife and the pin from the compass. "It works as a needle," said Jana, "if you don't mind big stitches," and fell to work. "It doesn't need to be perfect, remember," said Theo. "Most of it will be under my cloak." Then she was pulled away again. That whole day, wherever she went, hands were tugging at her arms, ankles, cloak. Gave her an unexpected flicker of warmth in her chest and hands. Sergei was asking for permission to lead a party outside towards the outhouse to search for weapons. "Don't kill each other," said Theo. "All right? Not even as practice." Irina rapped on the wall for attention. "You know what's more important than a dress? Shoes. You can't wear boots, not if you're supposed to be a countess." "Yes, I can. Nobody will see." "But if they did..." Everyone looked at Theo's boots. They were charred at the toe, and they smelt odd, of wolf pee and blood. They were not shoes of somebody who flicks caviar at walls in golden drawing rooms. If they did see them, you'd be done for. "Can anyone swap with me, then?" But everyone else had shoes as bad or worse. "Could we make her some boots?" said Jana. "What from? I'll just risk it," said Theo. "Wait," said Ilya. He was glittering with sudden excitement. "Now I've got an idea. Ballet shoes." "Whose though?" said Theo. "The Imperial Ballet School." He began to hop from foot to foot, 2 miles outside the gates. "How do you know that?" He was split-leaping around the room. "I used to watch through the windows every night. That's how I learnt to dance. They throw shoes away sometimes. A real ballerina gets through more than one pair a week. I used to find them." He turned a cartwheel. "I'll go now. They know me. Sort of, at least. Not really. But the servants are used to seeing me outside. It won't take long there and back." "How will you get there?" "I'll borrow Bogdan's snowshoes." "Oh, will you?" said Bogdan. But one look from Alexei, and he nodded. "All right." "Shall I come too?" said Theo. "No," said Jana. "We'll need you to try on your dress, but someone else should go to look after him." "I don't need looking after," said Ilya. "Alexei could go," said Theo. "He's the eldest." Ilya pinkened. His face wrestled with a very badly hidden smile, and he led Alexei down the path, gesturing in the direction of the city. Theo watched them clamber over the gate. Jana came up behind her. "Who's going with you? Aristocrats your age don't travel alone." "Ilya, obviously. Alexei." "What will they wear?" asked Jana. "Ilya's uniform will do for him," said Theo. "It's dirty, but you can't tell unless you look hard. Alexei can wear my mother's green cloak. Nobody will see if he's not smart underneath it." Jana said, "Good. If anyone asks, you can say he's your big brother." "Second cousin," said Theo. "He looks nothing like me." It was a shame, she thought. It wouldn't be such a bad thing to look like Alexei did. A bit like sun encased in skin. She had scars on her hands from when Grey was a half-wild pup, and she wouldn't swap them for anything in the world. A few hours later, Sergei and his gang came cascading in from the castle grounds, bubbling and sniffing with excitement. Come and see. "What am I seeing? It's a surprise. Where are Alexei and Ilya?" "Not back yet," said Theo. But there was a clanging at the gate as 2 lanky bodies dropped down into the drive and came running. Ilya was waving something in his hands. "We've got some." At least, he hesitated, Alexei did. Ilya heard music. He got distracted. Ilya, Theo now saw, was blushing under the snow on his cheeks. "Just a bit. I wanted to watch the dancers." Theo looked from one to the other. "What happened?" "Sergei, you go ahead. We'll be right there." And then urgently, "Ilya, did something go wrong?" "He was dancing," said Alexei, "in full view, outside the ground floor window. He was copying them, those dancers, in plain sight." "Did anyone see?" said Theo. "One person," said Ilya. His cheeks and nose were turning red. "Only one." "Ilya, you could have been caught." "I wasn't, though. A man, one of the teachers, I think. He chased us, but it did create a diversion." Ilya's voice had a pleading note. "Alexei found these in the rubbish." The shoes were white, a little large for Theo, but that, she thought, would leave room for socks. They're a bit worn out, but clean. They might have a tiny bit of blood inside, but all ballet shoes do. Sergei came running around the house and sent a snowball at them. "Come on then, you come too. Everyone has to come." "What is it?" said Theo. Zoya said, "It's a secret. We made a secret for you." One of the little boys began. "It's an old..." But Sergei slapped a hand over his mouth. "Shh! That's not how you do secrets." Theo was seized by small hands and pulled around the corner of the castle. the little ones wading through the snow, Alexei carrying Clara on one shoulder. Sergei pointed to a space where the snow had been trampled by several small feet. There. It was a dog sled. Theo had never seen one so lovely. It was made of silvery metal, and the children had polished it with sleeves and rags until it shone. The runners had been oiled, and a lantern hung on the handle. The lantern was painted red. "Did you do all this?" asked Theo. "Yes," said Sergei. "Well, Yana helped a bit." Yana mouthed over his head. "A lot." "We thought you can't ride the wolves," said Bogdan. "Tell her, Sergei." Sergei nodded. "People don't. I've been to the city, and people don't ride wolves." "Yes," said Theo. She wanted to kiss Sergei. His face was so serious and so dirty. "I guessed that. But you might need to go fast. It's a big city, and the wolves can pull the sled." "Wonderful," said Theo. "Thank you." "Don't hug me," said Sergei. "Ilya says you hug like a wolf." Theo flushed, but then forced herself to grin. She made a rush towards him. The little one squealed, deliriously gleeful, and disappeared around the corner of the castle, followed by Yana. She stroked the sled. "That's quite something," she said. Look at the handles. They shine. That must have taken them hours. And out here in the snow." At that moment, Yana leaned out of the ballroom window. "Theo," she called, "come and try the dress on." Theo's stomach gave a swoop. If the dress was finished, it was nearly time to go. Nobody had a hairbrush, but they had made do with their fingers and a toothbrush Sergei had borne triumphantly back from the outhouse. Theo shivered in her underwear in the ballroom while Yana lifted the dress over her head. Zoya pulled a loose thread from the hem. "She's ready," called Zoya. "Everybody come see." There was a lot of bustling in the hall, and then the ballroom door burst open and the children streamed in. Ilya and Alexei last, whispering together. Everyone fell silent. A plait curled around Theo's head and fell, thick as her arm, to the backs of her knees. They had twisted it so the tangles didn't show. She was very pale, but her jaw was set. The dress fell in a simple square from her neck and brushed the ground. It was belted tightly with a silver chain from the chandelier, polished by Clara with snow and her sleeve. Theo held her shoulders far back, and her back straight. "If it feels strange," Yana said, "you're doing it right." And her chin high. "Don't look sideways either," said Yana. "I went to St. Petersburg once, and rich people look straight ahead. You have been bred, remember, to know that other people will get out of your way." The girls had touched her lips with some of the red paint from the outhouse watered with snow, and they were purplish red. The ballet shoes were white and made Theo want to paint her toes, and the dress, as she strode across the floor, rustled with the sound of fir trees. "Oh," said Ilya, "that's quite a lot more impressive than I expected." Yana tweaked at the dress and stood back. "We need gold. Countesses wear gold." "I don't have any gold," said Theo. "I had a gold chain before all this, but not any more." "I know," said Ilya. "There was a stack of Bibles in the library." "What?" called Alexei. But Ilya had gone. "I don't really have time for praying." Ilya was back minutes later, carrying an armful of half-burnt books that came up to his chin. He was not, as far as Theo could tell, in a praying kind of mood. "The gold lettering! Look! See! It comes off under your finger now." Everybody fell on the books. The idea seemed to make the little ones giddy. "God could arrest you for this," said Sergei. "This is better than murder." Theo rubbed a little of the gold on her finger and touched it to the outside corners of her eyes and eyelids and fingernails. They had more than enough. Theo put a little on Black's eyebrows and some flakes on White's ears. The wolves, after all, were her disguise, she thought. They deserved some war paint. At last the children stood back, leaving Theo in the middle of the ballroom, the two wolves at her side. "That," said Alexei, surveying their handiwork, "is the stuff that fairy tales are made of." The snow was melting that evening as Theo drove the sled into St. Peter's Square. A crowd of children had gathered to beg for coins outside the ballet, and they stood looking up at the sky and down at the girl. The not snow was almost as extraordinary as the child. Almost. The girl would have been extraordinary, whatever the weather. A blood-red cloak, freshly washed, flapped behind her. Her forearms from elbow joint to wrist were covered in scratches and bruises, but her eyes were gold. The set of her chin suggested she might have slain a dragon before breakfast. The look in her eyes suggested she might, in fact, have eaten it. The boy sitting on the sled, dressed in a soldier's uniform, had a look of determination you see not in habitual adventurers, but but in people who have only recently discovered that they are brave. The young man stumping behind, wrapped in green velvet and fur, had covered most of his face, but the mouth could be seen below the hood, laughing. But what was really extraordinary, what was making the crowd of children stare and whisper, was the pair of wolves she drove before her. They shone with sweat and ice, and their backs were humped with muscle, and they were speckled with gold. This, then, was a jail. Theo had never seen one before, though she had read descriptions of them. It was surprisingly large and beautiful. 4 great red brick wings shaped like a cross around a central lookout post. It was loud too, the shouts of prisoners, occasional laughter, occasional groans. Theo shivered and prayed that the groans did not belong to Mama. Passage through the city gates had been made easier by the fact that there were no adults, only Alexei, and he, lounging against the gate, looked neither adult nor child, the offspring of a war god and a sapling tree. Probably, Theo thought, people just didn't suspect children. It had taken half an hour to find the jail. Ilya's sense of direction, he admitted, was not wolf-like. They stopped around the corner of the jail to confer. "What do you think?" Theo peered at the guards and at Ilya. "Do I act haughty or sweet?" "Haughty with the gate guard, I think." "Yes," said Alexei. "They won't care about adorable. They're sentries. Adorable works best on unobservant people. Look confident." Theo nodded. Her confident face felt a lot like her scowling face, but would have to do for now. The walls padded up to the stone arches over the jail. There were men in uniform marching across courtyards. Theo looked at the guard. She let her eyes travel up from his boots to his beard. She thought about lisping, but discarded the idea. "Good evening, man," she said. Behind her, she felt Alexei nod. My father said I should wait for him inside," she said. "Who?" "My father." "Yes, but who is your father?" Theo said the first name that came to mind. "Count Wolfovich, and this is my cousin, and this is his pet soldier." Ilya glared. "I don't know the name," said the guard. "I can fetch someone, though. Just a second." "My father is the Tsar's second cousin," said Theo quickly. She forced astonishment into her voice. "You would be surprised to hear you don't know of him. And, his surprise is often painful for those who feel it." The guard hesitated, glancing over his shoulder. "I was told the guards were properly educated, but if not, I will simply tell him, 'No need for that, miss. Let us pass, please.' Of course, no need to mention this, miss. And what beautiful wolves." "Thank you," said Theo. "I know. They make such good pets," he said, his ingratiating smile lingering on Black's gold-flecked fur. Theo moistened her lips. The wolves felt her quiver, and Black's hackles rose. "Yes," she said. "Don't they just?" "Well, you probably know the way. You can wait in the warden's library, 4th floor of the central tower. Stay away from the cells." Theo was not sure about the 4th floor. Wolves do not like stairs, and Ilya was making meaningful faces at her, but there seemed no choice. The stairs were marble with thick brass balustrades, and the wolves' claws made a tapping on them as they climbed. It sounded to Theo loud enough to summon every soldier and prisoner in the place. Nobody did appear, though, as they made their way up. On the 2nd floor, just next to the staircase, there was a marble alcove. It had a statue of an austere-looking saint in it, and a small marble bench. Theo ducked into it. The glory of having made it this far rose up in her throat, and she had to force herself not to giggle. "Ilya," she said. "Ilya, what were your faces trying to say?" His face was red, but not with glee. He glared at her. "I was trying to say we should be going to the wings of cells, not up the central tower." "Well, I didn't get that. Try to make your faces more specific next time." "Faces aren't specific things. Faces are general." "My faces are quite specific, actually, and your face is said specifically, 'Someone is making me kiss my great aunt.'" She grinned at him. "Which way now?" Alexei's voice cut across the bickering. "Ilya?" "I don't know," said Ilya. He avoided looking at the older boy. "I know there are 4 wings of cells, shaped like a cross." "Yes, but which one will Mama be in?" "I don't know. I thought there might be signs to the women's block, but there's not. I'm sorry." All the laughter and hope dropped out of Theo's chest. "I thought it would be easy once we were in. I thought we'd at least be able to see her." Ilya said, "I think the south wing might be the one for women, but I'm not sure." Alexei, though, seemed unperturbed. We can't just guess. We only get one try. If we guess wrongly, they'll sound the alarm and we'll all end up in jail, which is not in the plan. So, he turned to Ilya, where will the servants be? Why? Servants always know more about the details of a place than anyone else. But they won't tell you. Actually, I've found, said Alexei, that people will tell you whatever you want as long as you're nice enough and as long as there's nobody else around. And you can usually tell from looking at someone if they're going to be a talker. How? This, Theo thought, was useful information. It's in the eyes and the way the mouth falls. Look out for someone who wears their eyebrows a little higher than most people and whose mouth is like this. Alexei opened his lips 2 millimeters and pushed his lips slightly forward, as if they're always about to speak. Then let's go, said Theo. Look out for people who talk fast. Fast talkers often let out information without realizing they're doing it. I should know. I am one. Nobody stopped them. They paraded down the tiled floor, the wolves' claws clacking like high heels, and nobody batted an eye. It was as if the gleaming wolves acted as a kind of camouflage. They melted into their surroundings. Busy men in groups of 2 and 3 pushed past, some of them with wolves of their own, a few of them turning to smile in a fatherly way at the top of Theo's retreating head. The door to the kitchens was painted white. From behind it came the clatter of washing up and bursts of singing and hurrying feet. Alexei ushered them in and, grinning, asked for meat for the wolves. Count Wolfovich's orders, he said. There was a girl dressed all in black, polishing the silver. Theo edged closer. How long does that take you? The girl wore her hair piled high on her head. It wobbled precariously as she polished. A few hours, miss. Theo studied her. Her eyebrows, she answered, were high. A talker, perhaps. How many spoons is that? More than 100 here. That's for dinner in honour of the army tonight. There'll be 30 of them, but they get 4 spoons each. What? Theo jibed and stopped. She'd been about to ask, what on earth for? But countesses would know. She said, what? What a task! And winced at herself. Disguise is not an easy thing. What are they celebrating? They've arrested a bunch of agitators, miss. At least that's what they say. Most of them are just homeless folk. They want them off the streets for General Rakov's visit on Thursday. What will they do with them? I don't know. With Rakov, nobody knows. He's got a violent heart, that man. Her eyes widened. He's not a friend of your parents, I hope, miss. No, said Theo, with complete honesty. Tell me about him. Well, there's some poor woman dragged in from the countryside too. Rakov's pushing for the death penalty, because it's her fault he lost an eye. She lowered her voice. He wants to watch in person. But she won't have had her trial. What? Theo shook herself. I meant, I hope they're keeping her safe until her trial. The girl wiped her hair from her eyes in a proud sort of way. This is the safest prison in Russia, miss. And is she in the safest wing? Well, there's just one for the women, miss. The North. Barely anyone in it at the moment, but that'll change, the way General Rakov's going. Fascinating, said Theo. She nearly said thank you, but stopped herself just in time. Countesses, she decided, were probably not thank you sort of people. It took all the self-control Theo had not to sprint straight out of the kitchens and down to the north wing of the jail. But Alexei kept a strong hand on her arm as they left and pushed her and Ilya into an unused library. She's in the north wing, cried Theo. She's just down there. She shook off Alexei's grip and pirouetted. Let's go. We can't go now, he said. I was talking to the cook. He said there's one guard for every 2 cells. You wouldn't get close to her. We just have to run fast, she said. Come on, she's right there, waiting for me. You'll come with me, won't you, Ilya? But the younger boy's face was grave. We wouldn't make it, he said. There's no way. We need numbers. We need an army. Theo stared from one to the other. I knew you'd side with Alexei. Ilya turned puce. It's nothing to do with Alexei. It's fact. Theo sagged. She sat down on the floor next to Black and laid her head against his side. I just want to see her. But Theo, we have an army, said Alexei. At home. We just need to get them ready. Then we can storm the jail. We'll make a diversion and we'll break out your mama. When? Theo brushed some gold out of her eyes and swallowed hard. She bunched her fists. Tomorrow? Thursday, during Rakov's visit. They'll all be on parade or polishing their buttons. That's the time. How? First, he said, we need to train our mob. Then we start a revolution.